What if I told you that Ferrari just discovered something in Lewis Hamilton's car that they didn't even know existed? Because what happened in Suzuka practice was not normal. It was not a simple improvement. It was not even a good isolated pace. It was something much deeper. Ferrari saw data that did not add up, a behavior of the SF26 that completely broke with everything they had understood until now. And the most worrying thing, it was only happening with Hamilton. How is it possible that a driver is unlocking a performance that the team itself cannot explain? Because while Ferrari thought its car had clear limits, Hamilton showed that those limits may not have been real. And that changes absolutely everything. Because now the question is no longer whether Ferrari can catch up to Mercedes. The real question is whether Ferrari has been losing performance, without even realizing it. Ferrari arrives in Japan with a strange feeling. It is not failure, but it is not control either. After China, the Italian team begins to build a fairly clear internal narrative. They are close but not close enough. The SF26 has rhythm. It has moments where it seems competitive, even capable of fighting. But there is always something that doesn't quite fit. And that something is precisely what is beginning to worry within the team. Because it's not an obvious weakness, it's not an isolated problem. It's a complete lack of understanding of where the car's limit really is. Hamilton arrives at Suzuka at a very particular moment. His podium in China not only breaks a long drought, it also completely changes his mental state within Ferrari. For the first time, you feel like you're beginning to understand the car, that there's a real connection between what it asks for and what the SF26 delivers. But the most important thing is not the result. It is the internal feeling that you have not yet reached your full potential. And that is key because while the team sees a car with limitations, Hamilton sees a car with hidden margin. Two completely different readings within the same garage. Ferrari, for its part, arrives conditioned. There are no major improvements, no new solutions, no technical salvation for Suzuka. The big update has been delayed, forcing the team to face an uncomfortable reality. Everything they achieve in Japan will depend solely on how they understand what they already have. And that further exposes the problem. Because when there are no new parts, there are no excuses. The performance that appears on the track is a direct reflection of the knowledge of the car, or the lack thereof. And here the real tension begins within the team. Because instead of looking for more load, more efficiency, or more top speed, Ferrari is beginning to focus on something much more basic and much more complex at the same time. Behavior. How the car responds in curves, how the tire enters the window, how it reacts to small setup changes. Details that appear normal, but in this case hide something deeper. Because the SF26 does not behave consistently. Sometimes it responds like a competitive car, and other times it seems completely limited. That had already been seen before. In Australia, for example, Ferrari showed a misleading performance, where conditions and strategic errors hid part of the car's reality. Even Hamilton acknowledged that the adaptation process was much more complex than expected, having to modify his driving style to get closer to the behavior of the car. That means that the car does not adapt to the driver. It is the driver who has to adapt to the car. And that, in Formula One, is always a warning sign. But what Ferrari did not expect is that at Suzuka all that would begin to change. Because during practice, Hamilton's car begins to show different behavior. Not radically different at first glance, but clear enough in the data to set off all the alarms within the team. Sectors where they previously suffered are now beginning to be competitive. Cornering phases where the car was unstable now seem more controlled. And the most disconcerting thing, this does not come from a technical improvement nor from an update. It comes from the use of the car itself. And that's where Ferrari is completely confused. Because if the performance appears without structural changes, then the problem was never just the car. The problem was how they were accessing that performance. And that opens a huge crack within the team's analysis. Because now they have to ask themselves something that until then was not on the table. Have they been misinterpreting their own car since the beginning of the season? What starts as a simple internship becomes a turning point. Ferrari is no longer looking for speed, it is looking for answers. Because what Hamilton is doing with the SF26 doesn't fit the model they had in mind. And when a driver breaks that model, the entire team has to rethink from the ground up how they understand their car. And the most disturbing thing of all is that this is just the beginning. Because what they have seen in Suzuka is not a solution yet, it is just a clue. A clue that the SF20SIX's true potential could be hidden in a place Ferrari hadn't even looked. And this is where everything becomes much more serious for Ferrari. Because it's one thing to see signs, but it's another thing entirely to start confirming them turn after turn in the data. And that's exactly what happens during practice in Suzuka. What initially seemed like an anomaly in Hamilton's car is beginning to repeat itself. And when something is repeated in Formula One, it stops being a coincidence and becomes a pattern. Ferrari begins to analyze in depth what is happening, and the first thing they detect is that Hamilton is not only being fast, he is being efficient in a way that the car had not shown before. It's not just about setting better times, but about how you're achieving them. The way he enters a curve, how he maintains the minimum speed, how he manages the transition between phases. Everything begins to fit together in a way that they had not seen in simulations or in previous races. And here comes the first big blow for the team. The SF26 does have that performance, but it is hidden behind an extremely specific window. A window that they had not been able to find consistently until now. This explains why the car seems so ragged on previous weekends. It wasn't that the performance didn't exist, it's that it was extremely difficult to access. This connects directly with one of the problems that Ferrari had already been experiencing since the beginning of the season: inconsistency. In China, for example, the car had shown real race pace, even allowing its drivers to compete against each other aggressively in the final laps, but never with the feeling of having total control over the behavior of the car. Now everything starts to make sense. The car is not predictable because its performance depends on very specific conditions: tire temperature, aerodynamic balance, load in certain cornering phases, small factors that, when aligned, unlock that hidden potential. But if one of those elements fails, performance disappears. And that is exactly what Ferrari had been experiencing without fully understanding it. The most shocking thing is that Hamilton seems to have found a way to access that window. And not because the car has changed, but because he has changed how he interacts with the car. This had already begun to be seen from Australia, where he had to modify his driving style to adapt to the behavior of the Ferrari, adopting techniques closer to those of his teammate to maximize cornering speed. But in Suzuka he goes one step further. It is no longer just adaptation, it is exploitation. Hamilton is not surviving the car, he is starting to master it. And that leaves Ferrari in an awkward position, because now they have to answer a critical question. If a driver can do it, why hasn't the team been able to find that performance before? This is where the strongest internal conflict comes in. Because engineers are beginning to realize that their model of understanding SF26 might be incomplete, or even wrong. All the simulation work, all the previous data, all the settings used, could have been pointing in the wrong direction. And in Formula One, realizing that in the middle of the season is a huge problem. Furthermore, this generates a direct consequence that Ferrari cannot ignore: the potential difference between drivers. Because if this performance depends on how the car is driven, then not all drivers will be able to access it in the same way. And that completely breaks the team's work base, which needs consistency to develop the car. Ferrari is no longer simply looking to improve, it's trying to redefine its understanding of the car in real time. Each lap of Hamilton becomes a reference, a clue, a piece of the puzzle. But also an increasing pressure, because the clearer it is that this performance exists, the more evident it becomes that they have not known how to find it before. And this is where the situation becomes critical, because what seemed like a weakness of the car is beginning to become a weakness of the team itself. Not in terms of ability, but of interpretation. Ferrari is not limited by what it has, it is limited by what it understands. And if they can't fully decipher what Hamilton has discovered at Suzuka, all this potential will continue to be something temporary, something unstable, something that appears and disappears. But if they succeed, then we are looking at something much bigger. Because Ferrari would not only have found performance, it would have discovered a new way to exploit its car. And this is where everything that Ferrari discovered at Suzuka stops being a simple technical curiosity and becomes a turning point that can mark their entire season. Because what they have in front of them is no longer a performance problem, it is a steering problem. Ferrari now knows something it didn't know before: the SF26 has more potential than they've shown. But that knowledge, far from being an immediate advantage, is a brutal pressure. Because discovering that the performance is there means accepting that you haven't been using it correctly. And in such a tight championship, each race lost due to lack of understanding weighs twice as much. The most delicate thing is that this discovery comes at a time when there is no room to hide. With no major updates until Miami, Ferrari can't rely on new parts to solve its problems. Everything involves understanding, replicating, and stabilizing what Hamilton has found. And that is much more difficult than simply introducing aerodynamic improvements. Because this isn't about adding performance, it's about unlocking it consistently. But there is something even more important. And that is what this means internally. Because Hamilton, in just a few races, has not only adapted to the car, He has gone one step further and has begun to reveal aspects of the car that the team itself was not clear about. And that completely changes his role within Ferrari. He is no longer just the star driver. He is a key piece in understanding the car. This also leaves an uncomfortable question floating within the team. If performance depends so much on how the car is driven, to what extent can Ferrari build a solid foundation for both drivers? Because in Formula One, it's not enough to have potential. You need to reproduce it weekend after weekend on any circuit, under any conditions. And right now, Ferrari doesn't have that guarantee. What they saw in Suzuka is a door, but they don't fully know how to open it every time they need to. And that is the real risk. Because if they can't turn this discovery into something stable, the SF26 will continue to be an unpredictable car. Able to get close to the top at certain times, but unable to stay there consistently. However, there is also the other scenario. The scenario in which Ferrari manages to completely decipher what Hamilton has done, integrates it into its working model, turns it into a solid base. And suddenly that car that seemed limited becomes a true contender. And that's where Suzuka stops being just another weekend. Because what started as a simple practice session could end up being the exact moment in which Ferrari found the key to its season. The big question now is not whether Ferrari has the pace to fight at the top. The real question is much deeper. Will they be able to understand what they already have in time? Or will they miss an opportunity that could change everything? Because that's what's truly shocking about all of this. Ferrari didn't discover a problem, it discovered a hidden potential. A performance that was always there, but that they had not been able to find, understand, much less control. And in a sport where every thousandth counts, not knowing how to access your own performance is almost as serious as not having it. Hamilton, without making noise, without needing major external changes, has exposed something that completely changes the team's narrative. It has shown that the car's limit is not where Ferrari believed, and that forces us to rethink everything. From the way they configure the car, to how they interpret the data, to the way they develop the car throughout the season. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.